I am Brian Mays. Follow along on our adventures chasing all kinds of game in the heartland of America. Our passions run from the Northwoods rivers all the way out to the wild and wide open prairies. We are untamed, and wild is all we chase. This is the Amazing Outdoors Podcast.
Oh, that's a ski, dude. That's a moss ski.
There's one on the tree right there.
Oh, go to another one. That's a good way to start the morning. I'm drinking some of my beer quick.
What is going on, folks? Brian Mays here for another episode of the Amazing Outdoors Podcast. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Today's show is being brought to you by HW Launchers. Head on over to Facebook and check out Jeremiah's Pigeon Launchers as spring training season is around the corner. Today's episode, Dave Lessard, under 40 yards at YouTube. We get into a lot of different stuff. Peel back the onion on who Dave is and why he loves to grouse and woodcock hunt so much. We even chat a little bit about his western hunts. I'm just going to get on into it. Let's rock and roll. Well, hey, Dave, thank you for coming on the Amazing Outdoors Podcast. It's Dave Lessard. I told you I was going to still screw it up, and I had it right the whole time.
You nailed it.
But under 40 yards at YouTube, this has been a little bit in the making, man. I think probably, 2 or 3 seasons we've been bullshitting on Instagram about how we need to get together on a tailgate.
Absolutely. I think it probably maybe the meeting at Pheasant Fest last year would finally put it over the edge, but yeah, it's been a while.
And then we didn't make it happen this fall either.
Right. Hey, there's better things to do, right?
It's
great to be here, Brian. Thanks for inviting me on.
I'm glad to have you, man. I've enjoyed our content sharing and chatting on Instagram. We definitely stumble across some of the same covers in the fall, and I don't know. It's just, you're a good old boy, man. Even though you have that Illinois plate, I won't hold that against you.
Please don't. I'm desperately trying to leave. So
you're trying. You're supposed to hold my Minnesota plate against me still. So I'm desperately trying to leave that state.
There is something to that for sure.
Oh man. Well, how was your season this fall? You did some traveling.
Overall, yeah, a little bit. We did. We start out west. We started traveling out west a few years ago, and that's the perfect way to me to start the season is out there, as long as we can avoid the heat as much as possible. But yeah, we kind of settled on Montana for that trip. It seems to offer everything we want and great birds, and this year was no different. Bird numbers were good. Weather was a little warm. Of course, we had to go almost for the season opener out there, which I really try to avoid. But my buddy Tom, he travels and works a lot, so his schedule, we kind of work that in between his travel. So that's when we hit it. So a lot of wildfire smoke this past fall out there. So it was
I noticed
different
that in
for
your
sure.
Photos, man. Like there was definitely a gray haze.
It changed a lot. I think the dogs, the scenting was clearly different, at least with our dogs. We just saw different, he's blowing up coveys when he normally would never do that. So the scenting was different, that's for sure. But it was a few days it was pretty clear, but man, some of the days were it was almost just like a thick fog all day long. And it's with you the whole time. So, we were kind of waiting for the wind to change direction and clear it out, but it didn't really go away.
Damn.
But we still had a great time. That place is pretty amazing. I know you you made a trip out there a couple years ago, and I'm sure you had the same experience.
I did, and I fully intended to go back this year, but life got in the way, and I ended up going to Arizona last February and kind of blew that travel budget. So it is what it is. I thought I could make it up, and it didn't happen, so it had to get moved off the table. But Montana's a great state. Did you do the sage grouse thing too? Or just Sharpies and Huns? We
didn't. We only had, we had 4 days of hunting, maybe 4.5. So to get in the sage grouse was about a 2-hour drive, a little bit further west from where we were. And we kind of had intentions of doing it, but it just didn't work out. It's hard to leave birds, you're finding birds, and you're there primarily for sharptail, occasional Hun covey. But when you're into them, it's like, man, it's tough to drive 2 or 3 hours and try to look for something that you might not see all day. So, and it was getting pretty heated, and our dog power is pretty low. I mean, we had 3 dogs, but only 2 pointing dogs and a lab. So, and we're pretty much running them the whole time with each other as a group. So we're basically limited to dog power, and that's kind of, 4 days was enough. The dogs are pretty much spent after that. But sage grouse is on the list for an upcoming year. So
I guess my computer's going to chime in tonight. It is what it is. So the sage grouse thing is a lot of fun. When I went out last year, I took a totally different approach than, you trying to avoid the heat. I said, everybody else is going to be trying to avoid the heat. So I'm just going to go. And if I can only run my dogs for an hour or 2 in the morning, I'll sit around and talk to the, old timers in camp that, strings of dogs that are 10, 20 deep, that are just up here for the month training dogs. Like, I'll hang out and drink cocktails all afternoon with them and go run dogs the next day in the morning. And honestly, on sharptails, we got really lucky.
Shoot some doves, maybe.
I mean, I didn't have a problem acquiring my sharptails in the morning. I actually had a couple times where I pulled off on birds because I had another dog to rotate yet that morning. And and I got a couple times where it cooled off enough to go run, a brace each for 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes or so in the evening. But because I had a lot of that downtime, it was a lot easier to just go, hey, I'm here for 9 days. Like, I'm going to take a break in the middle, and I'm going to go down and see some other cover. And man, when I got down there, I hunted for one good solid morning, hiked like not even probably 4 miles. There were 3.5 miles out in that shit. And I got a bird that evening on the chance because I saw some off the road, and I, turned around, dropped the dog, and freaking went after him, and I got a bird. And by the time I got over that horizon and into a wash and turn around and come back towards the truck that next morning, I said, screw that. I'm going back to where I know there's birds. So I totally, you don't leave birds to find birds, but if I had not gotten that one sage grouse, I probably would have stayed the rest of that day and then went back. But it's worth an effort. But if you got short on dog power too, like literally it's 2-hour run in the morning, all 3 dogs, trying to cover some ground. Like, it probably beat the dogs up the most out of that whole entire trip, just with all the cactus and dry cover. And, we were up and down washes, which, it's not any different than running up in them hills out there, but it was hard on them for some reason. So I think it has to do with a lot of the cactus out there, but no reason to beat your dogs up.
We don't see as much cactus as we did in North Dakota. It seemed like we found a lot more cactus than we did in Montana. But we spent a lot of the afternoons, heat of the day, just scouting. So we drove around a couple different towns we hadn't been to, and we drive by a pretty popular town. I won't say which, but in a pretty active hotel there full of bird hunters. And we kind of pulled in because there's guys everywhere with kennels and dogs. Pulled up to these guys, and they were actually from Illinois also, but southern part of the state. And he probably had six or 8 pointers with him. And so we're chatting with him. And next thing we know, there's like a little greenhouse across the street from the hotel. And here comes, I don't know if he was the owner or some guy that worked there, but he comes running over to us as a group, and they've got a gravel truck coming in like 30 minutes, and they needed to move all these railroad ties before he got there. So would you guys mind helping move some railroad ties? No, sure. So we headed over there, and we spent, about a half hour, 45 minutes moving these railroad ties in place for him. And here comes that truck and dumps all this gravel just in time. So, I think he lucked out, and I'm not sure we did, but it was nice to help him.
Hey, that goes a long ways for even just the karma on the bird hunting trip,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So you guys got into, I'm assuming Huns too out there, like everybody else. The Hun numbers up there sounded like they were fantastic this year. Yeah, they were. Yeah, Huns were better this year than last. We didn't find a lot of them, honestly. We probably weren't in the most popular places if you're gonna take a poll of the places to go, but we kind of hit all new places this year. This was our second year there. And I think we hunted one property that we hunted last year, and we did really well on this particular property last year. And this year was a total bust. It was like night and day, which was funny. So we kind of just explored all new places, and that's what's cool there is there's so much opportunity to, just pick a block management and go to it. And the state pockets and BLM, we usually stayed away from BLM because it was pretty heavily grazed. State land, I think, honestly, is probably the best out there, the best cover. It seemed like it had less grazing on it. But the block management plan is just fantastic as far as access goes. Can't thank those landowners enough for providing, and the way they take care of the land is just amazing. We got to meet a couple of the other ranchers to get permission on a type 2 BMA that requires written permission, and just terrific guys. Just talking to them, they have very little reason to give access to their land. I know there's some monetary benefit, but it's probably not a lot. I don't know what the program is, but just talking with those guys that's half the treat. And seeing how some of the logging road pull-offs are up in the Northwoods, man, like us hunters don't give those folks a lot of reason to do it. There's trash all over the place,
right?
And, shotgun holes all over the place, and it's just it's great that they do it, and you just continue to see that program grow in Montana, because it's great. Wish some of the other larger prairie states would have
it wouldn't be the
similar.
Same. Yeah.
So how was the Northwoods for you?
That was the trouble. It was overall it got better as the season went. I know, it's kind of contradicts a lot of reports, but my covers were really slow, and late September through mid to late October, it seemed to get better as the leaves came down as far as bird numbers. I just, it seemed like everybody around me was reporting, great stuff. I think you included. But, I've been at it for a long time, 30 plus years. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this was, I would say, it was an average year for me. Now, I know a lot of guys had stellar years, but Northwest Wisconsin last spring, we had that pretty bad ice, heavy, wet snow, and just tremendous amount of snow, and then ice. I don't know if that affected the birds, but there was so many laydowns this year. It changed. Some of my covers were totally transformed. They didn't even look the same. I didn't recognize them because of all the bent over aspen and just blocked the road completely. And it's just, I had to have an effect on the birds in certain pockets. I don't know. But then there was days that were just terrific. A little bit.
Because I think there's something to...
There was days that were just terrific.
I think there's something to what that laydown's going to do. I just haven't got to wrap my head around if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's not good for the forest. The timber is going to be useless for the counties. But on the same token, like, is it really good for the grouse? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, maybe the result of the ice is good, but what caused it, maybe wasn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure because I thought it was kind of pockety. We got a little bit of a leg going here tonight.
The birds, the birds were they were grouped up like a lot more than they normally are. They didn't break up in October. It seems like I found a lot of groups all the way through the month, which was strange.
I found a lot of groups all season, to be honest with you. There was very low.
Did you?
Yeah. There was kind of like maybe November where we found, and end of October, I started to find like a lot more singles. But even the last weekend of the season, I ran across a group of 5 of them. So food source is all I was thinking at that point.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I was pulling green salad out in late December. It's crazy this year.
Well, I don't think we actually told everybody besides who your name is actually, what else you do. You might as well get your YouTube plug in, Dave. I apologize.
All right. Okay. Thanks, man. I've got a YouTube channel called Under 40 Yards. It's primarily upland hunting, these past few years, it's only upland hunting. I've been doing it for 10 years now, so I finally feel like I had some experience doing it. Although I haven't figured out the YouTube algorithm yet, that's for sure. But I don't think upland videos is it. But it's a lot of fun. Keeps me occupied and kind of keeps me of a student of the game, I think, a little bit more than it used to. And it sort of keeps you honest, but it's a lot of fun. So I spend a lot of time recording video, shooting video, both GoPro. I carry a mirrorless camera for video and photography. I've gotten a lot more into photography the last few years. I enjoy that as well.
And you take some damn good dog pictures.
I just kind of enjoy sharing the story of the upland woods, and primarily grouse and woodcock is usually what mostly you find, but quite a bit of pheasant. And then our western trips now, sharptail and prairie stuff is also on the channel. So go check it out. Maybe you've seen it before.
Under 40 yards, kind of go by U4 or U4Y is kind of the
UFY.
UFY, that's what it is.
Yeah, back when I was, we're trying to think of a name. Everybody's trying to come up with a cool name, and I thought, well, I've always been a shotgun guy because I used to shoot a lot of trap, and I've just shot shotgun since I was, a kid, and it's always under 40 yards, right? Your shotgun world pretty much revolves around that. And I thought, well, that's cool. And I also like handguns, and that's normally under 40 yards too. And I thought, well, that sounds like a name. Let's go with it.
But you're knocking grouse down at 40 yards.
No idea what it means.
You're a good shot.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So if I had a rifle, maybe if I was a big game hunter, I'd have over 40 yards on that channel or something like that. But maybe someday I'll get into that.
Oh, man.
It doesn't, I don't think it plays with the algorithm nicely.
Yeah, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole tonight. The algorithm is the algorithm, and typically guys like you and I aren't on the favorable side of the algorithm.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've seen it all with YouTube over the years. I mean, there's been friendly years. Right now, I would say we're in a friendly year, but there's been years where I was demonetized for no reason.
They got shotguns, man.
It's totally subjective. Yeah, I mean, it's totally what's going on in current news cycles, and it affects the whole thing. They throttle it when they want to, and it's their platform. They can take it away at any time. So it's a love-hate relationship with YouTube for sure. But there's some other platforms that are up and coming. So I'm looking at those too.
You post anywhere else?
I tried Rumble for a while back when Rumble was really new and really the platform wasn't ready. I think now it would be worthwhile to maybe hit Rumble, but mostly because there's really not any hunting content on it, which is good and bad. And there's not a lot of upland content on it at all. So some of my older videos are out there, but their whole monetization thing is a little bit weird, and I can't quite figure it out. So we'll see. I got to study it more.
Yeah, that's not my favorable part of this whole game. I'd rather be in the field, man.
Yeah. Video work is a lot. It's a lot of work. For what it pays, I'm making 20 cents an hour.
Yeah, I don't know. I had this this year with. I mean, I just started calling it the GoPro curse. It started during the fishing season. It was like every time the GoPro was on, nothing happened, and then the minute you turn it off, something happens, or the minute the battery dies, something happens.
Yeah.
And this year I just didn't really carry it much. I kind of got frustrated with it, and honestly, man, like your videos are really, really good. I have to give you credit because I've carried a GoPro around on the hunting side of things now for the last probably 4 years, and rough grouse are so hard to get on film in cover, with the shadows and everything else. Like it's a crazy deal.
It's brutal. I mean, most of it's luck, and just time, I mean, most of the footage you throw away. So yeah, if I cut a video that's 30 minutes, there's 30 hours behind it, that are just trashed. But you just pick those moments that are right. And the cameras have gotten better. I've had a love-hate relationship with GoPro for the last decade. And, the latest ones are certainly better. Picture quality is way higher. And there's a few features on them now that make it a lot easier to manage the video. So that's changed things quite a bit. And image stabilization, when that came in, that changed everything. If you remember years ago watching a upland video, it was just a shaky mess. Yeah. So those days are gone, at least.
Yeah. I still haven't figured out. I've played with all the settings on there, and I'm no photographer. I know enough to be dangerous, but even Woodcock at sometimes they fly so fast that for me, I don't. What do you shoot in? Like what? How many frames per second?
I shoot in 4K 60 is usually what I. But I had been shooting in 2.7K 60 for quite a few years because it was easier to edit. File sizes were smaller. But I switched to 4K this past season, and if you shoot in 60 frames, you have a pretty good chance of getting a decent shot. You can shoot it in a higher frame rate, but you're just going to chew up more space, and you'll get maybe a creamier slow motion if you want it. I personally try to keep those slow mos to a minimum. I think a lot of guys overdo that stuff. but you do it where it makes sense. But if you shoot 60 frames, linear lens, to me, that's the best setting overall. And then when I'm in the prairie, I'll put a punch in, a little bit of a zoom, maybe a 20% zoom also on it, because the distances are just further. I don't personally like the wide view angle. I don't like the distortion, although it does work pretty good in the grouse woods because of it's so tight in there. I just don't like the distortion that it gives, and the linear, it punches in a little bit more, but you really don't lose a lot of that field of view very much. You lose a little bit, but it's not a detriment. I just think the video looks better. The quality is a little bit higher, in my opinion, especially when you're in the prairie. You're wide open. There's no reason to be on wide angle because, your distances are so much further typically, and that bird is just going to be a speck. You want to be at least be able to see, have the viewers be able to see what you're seeing a little bit more representative of what your eyes see.
Makes sense.
So, but those are just kind of the tricks you learn along the way, and after recording 7,000 gigabytes a year of of footage. So
it's a lot of footage, man.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but it's actually less now because of that new Hindsight feature that's been around for a few years now. It just allows you to capture that last 30 seconds in history and forward. So, in the past, I would record all the time. So in upland hunting, you don't know when something's going to happen, especially grouse hunting. Even if you have a good pointing dog, by the time you see the dog on point and hit record, it's probably too late. So now you don't really worry about it. The camera is always recording, but it's not writing the data to the SD card until you hit the record button. And once you do that, it will capture the last 30 seconds before that. That's kind of buffered, and then write that plus the stuff forward. So now you can just have nice little concise, let's say 1 or 2 minute clips that actually have action in them. And when you get home to edit, which is where the real work is, your life is so much easier because now you're not dealing with 100 gig, you're dealing with 10. And the amount of clips are shorter, and so it increases your workflow like 10x. It's the best technology that they've, besides stabilization, is that Hindsight feature is just, for me, it's like a game changer.
Yeah, but it chews up batteries, man. Do you use an external?
I do, yeah. I never run out of battery because I wear an external setup rig on my I use a head strap. That's the best connection to your body, in my opinion. I've tried chest straps, and it's always in the way. You can't see the guns covering the lens, so that's the best setup. And a lot of guys run a battery down in their pack and just run a cord up to it. I prefer the battery pack right on my headgear, all in one unit. So I can remove it, take it on and off as one unit. I don't have to worry about the cable getting caught in trees and stuff like that in the brush. Because, when you're in the grouse woods, you're banging brush and that cord is going to get ripped off all the time. So that's kind of the setup that works for me. Maybe I'll send you a picture of what I do.
Yeah, or just tag me on Instagram or something with it. Yeah, it'd be cool to see.
Sure.
I still got, I wear a head when I have one on, it's on my head, and man, how many times I've picked that thing up off the grousewoods floor. Like I can't take one when I guide, because it's just another thing that I got to worry about. And it's not, it's not
totally
my deal, so when I'm out running dogs or out doing it, just hunting by myself, I try to, but it's always getting hung up on shit. And my hat always comes off. So, I mean, no matter what,
Yeah.
at least once or twice during the walk, like my hat's going to be on the forest floor. Yes, it's just like another thing. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and like I've just got to the point in life where it's like, okay, I'm here to run dogs and find grouse. Screw the video.
Right. I feel the same way many days. I'm like, what the heck? Why am I doing this? But it's just part of the game for me now. I got my dog collar controls and I GoPro, and I got my mirrorless camera on my side, and it's kind of ridiculous really when you think about it, but if you're going to share stuff like that, it's kind of what you have to do. But
well, it helps finance
world-class a little content,
is poor.
Oh, thank you. If you got it'll make you a little bit of money to keep it interesting, at least on YouTube. So but basically I just take all that earnings from ad shares and I just reinvest in more camera crap. So I never actually make any profit. I just keep buying new stuff with the money. So that basically sustains it. So you're not going to get rich making upland videos,
So how did Autumn Blaze come about? Like, it's an awesome name, but was it all part of this camera stuff? I mean, how did you what kicked it off? And for the listeners that don't know,
so Autumn Blaze,
maybe you should explain to folks what the Autumn Blaze is.
Okay. So this year I released the 10th year in a row of my grouse series called Autumn Blaze Rough Grouse Hunting. And this year was number 10. So I put out actually 3 parts to this year's series, and which is not normal. Normally I just put out one, and it's typically my October hunts when, kind of in the premiere time frame. But the whole term Autumn Blaze to me was, growing up, I've been hunting grouse for more than 35 years. And when I was a kid, we would go north for a week every year, and to me, it was always like the whole trip was a blaze, right? You're hunting the king of game birds. That's a thrill in its own. You're banging through the brush. Typically, a lot of times we were wearing blaze orange, so that kind of plays into the whole Autumn Blaze, but really it was more about just the action, and it obviously it's in autumn, and it's a blaze of a memory. And so I just kind of stuck that title and just said, well, I might as well just call it this every year and just put a number after it. And that's kind of how it started. And it really started with my Vizsla. He was the reason I started doing the videos at all. I always had an interest in videos. We had small kids, and I had camcorders and all that stuff, and you're recording your kids as babies and all this stuff. And so I was sort of into it then. But then I got that dog, and I was trying to document his training because I didn't know what I was doing. Even though he wasn't my first dog, he was really what I would consider my first bird dog. Although I had a short hair when I was a kid, and maybe we cover on that, but he was really the first dog that I had that I took it seriously, right, as an adult. And when I got him, I would go to a lot of put and takes, and I would just record kind of his progress, and learned a lot about myself, and most of it wasn't very good through video. And that's kind of how it started. I started with a cell phone. I would use my cell phone. I'd hold in one hand, and I'd try to shoot with my other. So I'm a left-handed shooter. I'd be shooting, these put and take pheasants with my left hand arm, and I'm trying to hold my cell phone with the other. And I thought, man, I've got to get one of these GoPros. They were pretty new on the market. And I eventually invested in one. I had a really cheap knockoff version at first. I thought I'd save some money and be clever, and it was a total piece of junk, total waste of money. So I finally got the real GoPro, and that's kind of where it started. And I just started carrying it with me to these training events, and I'd share it with my buddies because they were into bird dogs too. And I didn't have a channel then. I was just privately sharing little videos with them, and they would say, "Hey, these are pretty cool, and let's do one of my dog or whatever." And I'd make more. And next thing you know, I thought, I started looking around YouTube and seeing what kind of content. And there wasn't a lot. There was a couple guys that were doing them, and I thought, man, I think I can do that. There was one video in particular that, like, when I saw it, I was like, this is the one. It was the Consummate Sportsman. He's got the greatest grouse video of all time, in my opinion. And it goes back, more than 10 years now, but that was kind of the video I watched. I'm like, man, this is exactly what we do. No one's filming grouse hunting. If you look at upland content, it's like whitetail hunting. There's 7 million of them. If you look at upland, it's always pheasant, and that's the traditional thing. And, I like pheasant hunting too and all that stuff, but man, it's kind of nice to see a little bit different game bird. And no one was doing grouse back then. So it mostly because it's so difficult. And so that's where I kind of started, and I kind of treat it as my premiere video, even though it doesn't get as many views as like my Western videos get more views, but I think people maybe relate to those more. I don't know. So grouse hunting is not the most popular YouTube content. It's just my favorite. So I put more time into it than I do the other videos. And then some years later, I started doing a woodcock series to kind of separate the woodcock hunting, even though I'm doing that at the same time as grouse. I think people maybe like to see it in a separate, specific only for woodcock. And I enjoy doing those videos too, because it's a lot slower paced. And, woodcock to me didn't fall into the autumn blaze sort of category, because it's not that crazy rush type of hunt. It's a lot more relaxed and deliberate type of hunt. And I really enjoy woodcock hunting too, almost equally as well, but just for different reasons.
I love that you distinct the woodcock hunting versus the grouse hunting. Why don't you explain a little bit? This is a little bit of a deviation from, kind of where we were thinking about taking, but take a couple minutes and maybe explain to the listeners what your approach is for woodcock hunting versus grouse hunting. Can break that down a little bit. And what
Sure.
you meant.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Normally we're hunting them, the same day. A lot of their covers do overlap a fair amount. So you're going to run into both species at the same time. But as you get better at identifying what woodcock like, and if to be honest, I will also target them when I'm having a really poor shooting day with grouse. If I'm just not shooting the gun well and I'm frustrated, I'll go to some of my woodcock covers, and those covers are typically, I almost exclusively focus on younger aspen cuts for woodcock. Let's say from that 6 to 8 year, you'll find them in that 4 to 12 year type age span where, the grouse really won't show up until maybe that 8 year mark. So before that, when it's smaller cover, you'll find more woodcock. And there's something about the aspen root system that must hold enough moisture to generate the worms that they're eating. And I don't like hunting the alder swamps. I can't stand hunting swamps. I mean, those are the other places you're going to find woodcock. But why the hell would you want to get your feet wet when you can just walk through a nice, clean, young aspen stand and get all the action you can with woodcock? So from a hunting standpoint, it's a lot more relaxed because, they call the bobwhite quail the gentleman's game bird, but I really think the woodcock is it. If you have a bird that behaves better than a woodcock, then I would like to hunt it too. But from a pointing dog's perspective, from a pointing dog's perspective, I don't think you can beat a woodcock for just the overall visuals that you get out of it. You know, you're going to have a dog. You can have a dog on point for 10 minutes, and that bird is probably going to hold. And as long as you got a steady dog, you're going to have a dog on point for a long time until you get there. You'll have, I'm not going to say easy shooting, but compared to grouse, they're easier to kill. But they have their own tricks up their sleeves that will make you miss, and they will make you miss like you can't believe. But it's just a lot more relaxed pace. Like, I really enjoy woodcock because it's just calmer. You know, when you're grouse hunting, it's, you know, I'm not saying you're under pressure and you're tense, but you know, maybe
but
some
the
of
dog
that.
gets on point.
But
You know, you definitely hustle a little bit when you're grouse hunting. When you know it's a woodcock point, you're kind of like, well, you know, hurry up, but like, you know, come around. Like, you know, at least I do. Like, you know, I'm not nearly as kind of on. It's more relaxed, I guess. You hit the nail on the head.
It is, yeah. Sometimes you get irritated. You're like, you're out to find grouse, and damn it, he's on another woodcock, and you know, you can't pull him off point. You know, that's the wrong signal for a dog. So you gotta see it through, and so I just enjoy them because they make me laugh, like, out loud, and you know, grouse do too, but just in a different way. When you miss a woodcock, it cracks me up. You know, the way they fly, the things they do, they fly weird. They'll fly under things. They have the weirdest flight pattern, you know, where a grouse is just a rush and it's a blast through the brush. You know, the woodcock are weaving and bobbing, and you're shooting left and right and shooting. They're just funny. I enjoy hunting them, and I really, I think they're one of the best eating birds that there is too. I mean, if they're done right. So, and we never used to hunt them when I was a kid. We didn't hunt with dogs. So we'd occasionally kick up a woodcock and shoot one, but you know, without a pointing dog, you're really, you know, it's just incidental.
I always know when I'm in a woodcock flight is when you actually kick up the incidental birds. That's like for sure a sign. It's a woodcock flight. Get the young dog.
Yeah. Yeah, when you hit a flight, man, that could be a lot of fun as long as you get enough ammo.
We actually had I
don't feel like I ever hit a flight this year, but it was kind of steady this year. I never really hit like really heavy pockets of them. But
no, there was always a few birds in certain covers, or there was always a lot of sign. That's kind of it seemed to me like I was a day short or a dollar short and a day short, or whatever that saying is. Because man, oh man, there's woodcock wash all over, and there'd be like 3 birds in there. We had one small pocket of birds this year that literally I told the guys, let's go. Dog was on point, and bird went up, they missed, and bird flew 40 yards, set back down. And I'm like, you know, we moved another one that they didn't shoot, flew like 40 yards. And they just seemed like they were super tired. And I was like, guys, do you want any woodcock? Let's go grouse. Let's go find some more grouse. I'm like, let's get out of here. These birds are tired.
Right. They're busy little guys, you know?
Yeah, but that was like the only real, like, okay, these are, you know, this is a small flight of woodcock. Everything else was kind of like 1, 2, 3 birds, 1, 2, 3 birds. Not like years past where you go into a cut and there's, you know, 40 woodcock in there.
Right. Yeah, I think one cover, I would find like a dozen, you know, this year. It was pretty dry in general up there, so I think they flew over, and they were probably more in the swamps, which I don't like to go in. I mean, who wants to go down in those? But it was decent hunting. You know, a couple years ago it was tough, and then last year was really good.
Yeah,
it was just the right amount of moisture, I think, for the area. So
yeah, we had
they're always consistent. It's what I like about woodcock. They're generally pretty consistent for the last 10 years. You know, I've seen about the same amount of birds.
Yeah, and it's all kind of luck of the draw too
Correct.
when the flight comes in. They can be just about anywhere.
Yeah. We didn't really get any cold weather until very end of October. There was really nothing to push them down, so I think a lot of the birds we hunted this year were local birds, and we finally got into some flight birds like towards the end of the woodcock season.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
So you had a Vizsla, but you have a short hair now. Oh, and his name's Sawyer, right?
Right. Yes.
How old's Sawyer?
He's 4 now.
Okay.
My Vizsla we had to put down, let's see, 2 years ago now. He was 10 when we had to put him down. So I started with the Vizsla because my wife is a dog person, always has been, and she was bugging me about a dog. And honestly, I'm not a traditional dog person. I think I probably am now, at least hunting dogs. The dog has to have a purpose to me. Yeah. And, definitely the hunting dogs I feel totally different about than I used to. But so I had a friend that had a half Vizsla, half, I can't remember what it was mixed with. And it really didn't even look like a Vizsla, but I sort of knew his dog through that. And I started to kind of look into him. And the area that I live in, there's a pretty well-known Vizsla breeder, and they're just a half-hour drive from us. And I called them up, and we drove over there, and they had 2 litters on the ground, and I had no idea how much a properly bred dog cost at the time, because I came from the world where my first short hair was free, and I know a guy that paid $400 for his kind of thing. So when you go to a properly bred dog breeder, you're gonna pay some money. And I was like, whoa, how much? These are $2,000. I'm like, well, what do your normal ones cost? kind of thing. And so yeah, I think that litter had some high championship bloodlines in it. So he's like, oh, our normal ones are whatever, $1,500. And this was back, this is almost 15 years ago. And so I had mentioned to him, all of his dogs were spoken for, of course. We just walked in to meet the guy. And he said, well, are you going to hunt with him? And I said, well, yeah, of course I'm going to hunt with him. What else would I do with this dog? And I didn't know, but a lot of Vizsla owners, don't hunt with their dogs. And that's true for any breed, but maybe that one in particular. So he heard that, and he immediately crossed off a name on a list and put mine on. And his wife was giving him that look, like, what are you doing? He doesn't know me. I just met him that day, but because I was a bird hunter and I wanted to learn how to train this dog, he prioritized me over another customer. And we got a dog about just several weeks later, or I shouldn't say that. It was actually a few months after that we met that litter, but it was kind of luck of the draw. We just happened to be there at the right time. And I didn't get to pick the dog. It was the last male. I wanted a male dog. That was the only criteria that I had. And we brought the dog home, and this guy also had a put and take property right there. And you got the first year included in the price of the dog. So I thought, that's great. He's got pigeons. He's got 200 acres. You could buy pheasant from him and, kind of get started with the dog. So it was a pretty good scenario for me because I didn't know anything. And that's kind of where it started with the Vizsla. And I hunted him for, he kind of got sick when he was 7, and that's why we started looking for another dog. And that's how I ended up with the short hair. But I kind of wanted to go back to the short hair because, my childhood connection with one. And as much as I like the Vizsla breed, they're just not built as quite as robust as the short hair. And I really like that about Sawyer, the GSP. He's so sturdy and he's just very durable. You know, he holds up. He doesn't cover quite as much ground as the Vizsla did. But he doesn't burn himself out. One thing with the Vizsla, he would just run so hard. And, you know, after 3 hours, the dog is basically spent. And as a guy that only has one dog, typically, you know, I need a dog that has a little bit better pace and can just last a little bit longer through the day. And that's kind of where I'm at now with Sawyer. He's been a great dog. I can't, you know, he's got some faults, obviously, that are my fault. But overall, it's hard to complain about that dog. He was pretty good out of the box. I just kind of, you know, did the obedience thing with him, and that's 90% of the game in my mind anyway. So
yeah, especially if you're running as much as you are. You're putting him on wild birds quite a bit. He gets a lot of use. Yeah. We'll hit an occasional put and take, but I shy away from him now because he just, you know, he'll just dismantle a preserve field in minutes, and it's not even that much fun. So, you know, most of the preserves, the fields aren't big enough really for a dog like him. So it's, you know, there's dogs that are built for and trained for, you know, their experiences at preserves, and they work great, but he's probably not one of them. So what was this short hair like growing up? You told me earlier that it was not maybe the best dog. So you ended up doubling down and getting the short hair. So there must have been something there.
Yeah. Oh man, this is a whole podcast. I'll keep it as brief as possible. So I got him when I was 12. My uncle had sort of he was like an amateur breeder, sort of. He had like a small farmland. He had a lot of animals, you know, from exotic pheasant to, he had horses, and, you know, we would horseback ride, and it was kind of like our, you know, as a kid, it was a great playground for me. He had tractors, and I was really kind of a gearhead as a kid growing up. So and they lived a half a mile from us. So he had probably had a dozen short hairs at one time, and they were having litters, of course, and he's selling them and giving them away to people. And he gave me one, and the dog was, I think he was 6 months old when we got him, which wasn't great because my uncle, these were kennel dogs, you know, back in those days. This is in the 80s. You know, dogs were not kept inside. That was not, especially hunting dogs. They were not inside dogs, and my uncle was no different. You know, they were strictly tools for hunting birds, and that's the way he treated them. But the dog was pretty wild. So we got the dog, friendly dog, love people, like most short hairs do, and but he would find his way home because we were only half a mile away. So I'd get a call from my aunt, and she'd say, Bandit, his name was Bandit. Bandit's down here again. And I'd ride my bike down there and get that dog. 3 hours later, she'd call me again. Bandit's here again. I go and get him again. And because we hated to tie him up, we didn't have a fence. You know, we had a big yard. We kind of lived in a pretty rural area. It wasn't super rural, but we had an acre lot kind of thing. And I go get that dog, but he kind of became, you know, we were not dog trainers, and he kind of became the neighborhood menace. And our neighbors directly next to us raised chickens, you know, for eggs. And and that short hair had a liking for chickens. And over the period of, I think, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, he killed 28 chickens of the neighbors. And most of them, a lot of them we didn't know about, and the neighbor would just kind of deal with it. And my dad found out about it because my dad and this neighbor were friendly. And my dad's kind of like, he was kind of a hard ass kind of guy, no bullshit kind of person. And he says, if that dog does it one more time, you shoot that dog. Useless bastard, he called him, you know. So, well, the neighbor took that to heart, and I come home from school one day, and I came home from football practice, and normally the dog's all over me, jumping on me. We had a kennel out in the garage, and I come in, and he's just laying there. He wouldn't even get up. Go inside, ask my dad. He's reading a newspaper. What's wrong with Bandit? And he puts down the paper. Oh, Bob shot him today. And he lifts the paper back up. Just matter of fact. And I said, what? What? He shot him? Yeah, I told him to shoot that son of a bitch. He's killing chickens. And he keeps reading, and I don't have any use for that damn dog if he's going to be doing that. So I convince him to, this is later at night at this point. It's probably 7, 8 o'clock. And we happen to know the vet in the next neighborhood. We knew who he was anyway. We weren't that friendly with him, but we called him, and he opened up his store for us at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night to see my dog. And I talked my dad into taking him up there. And he looked him over, and he said, well, there's really nothing I can do because he didn't really get hurt that bad. It was just birdshot he shot him with, and it didn't really break his hide. So they're just kind of stuck into his skin, the pellets. And he goes, really nothing he can do. Just take some antibiotics, and I'll see you in a few days. And a few days later, the dog was like brand new, like nothing ever happened.
Oh, no shit.
But he hated that neighbor from then on. So about a year later, it happened again. So he took another shot to his to his ass end, but this time it wasn't nearly as bad. And that finally cured him of it. And I would come home from football practice in between this time frame, and I would find white chicken feathers all over the side of the yard. And I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch. And I grabbed the dog, and I'm trying to hide these chicken feathers before my old man got home, and to try to protect this dog, because he's on thin ice at this point, and my dad's not going to put up with it. And I'm covering up chicken feathers, and I'm burying them. And but that dog, he was like a killing machine. He killed. There was never an animal that he met that he didn't kill. That whether it was bird, squirrel, fox, possum, raccoon, he literally killed every single animal that we came across, except for other dogs. And he didn't have a problem with cats, oddly enough. So dogs and cats he was fine with. People he loved, but anything with fur he would kill. There was a time when I was in the backyard and I was playing baseball. I used to hit the ball to him for fetch. And I was doing that. He brings the ball back and he turns around and he takes off. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing? And I just watch him fly through the yard. And I have no way to control him, no way to recall. There was no e-collars or anything like that. We have no fence in our yard because it's too big. And about 20, 30 minutes later, he comes dragging a gray fox through the yard, and he plops it down in front of my feet and just looks at me. Okay, thank you. My uncle was a trapper, so I called him, and he took the pelt, and I mean, it was just all kinds of things that we got into. A raccoon in a swamp. He was in a cattail swamp with a raccoon, half underwater, and I couldn't get to him because it was just absolute muck, and I'm probably like 14 years old or something. And he's out about 100 yards in these cattail slough, and all I hear is just the worst noise you've ever heard of two animals going at it. And the cattails are just swinging back and forth. And then it just gets quiet. And I thought, oh shit. And then I can hear him coming through the cattails. I hear something, and here he comes with that coon and plops it down. And his face is completely bloodied. I mean, he couldn't even recognize him. He was so tore up. But he got the best of that coon finally. And he used to eat fireworks and firecrackers, and it was nuts. I mean, the dog was he would go over to the neighbor's yard and he would dig up her flower bed for no reason. He was a total menace. And so he got kind of a reputation around the neighborhood and with my buddies, and we all had entertaining time with him. But so he left an impression on me. So fast forward, we get the Vizsla, and he gets sick. We have to put him down eventually. But we had both dogs for a few years, actually. And I'm telling my wife about all these stories of my short hair. And then I tell her that I want to get one. And she's looking at me like I'm crazy, you know. So it's just a testament of how well-bred dogs are today versus back then. So, you know, you're talking 35 years ago or whatever, you know, the objective to breeding a dog, and my uncle was a backyard breeder, and you know, he's not pairing up the dogs for the right reasons. It's just happening. And compared to today, where you're breeding out certain traits, I mean, this dog is, although physically he looks almost identical to that dog, he's totally different animal. It's just amazing. You know, and a lot of that, of course, is training and environment and obedience and all that stuff that we do as a, you know, your hunting dogs live with you, so they have to be good citizens. But a lot of it comes from the breeding, and it's just a testament to how well breeders do things today.
There are a lot of really good breeders. There are probably not a lot of really good breeders too, but that's where you got to do your research. And the Vizsla line particularly was really popular for a while there, with just families, and it's a great breed. But
right, yeah.
You know, you get those scenarios where
I love the breed.
Yeah, the integrity of the hunting line is not what's important to the breeder, potentially. And those scenarios aren't necessarily, you know, where if you want a good dog for hunting, that's not who you want to end up with.
Right. Yeah. With short hairs, it's a little more difficult maybe to find the best breeders because there's so many, you know, and that's,
and they've
honestly, when I was looking at Vizslas, like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was honestly looking at another Vizsla, and there just weren't any litters in the near future. And a lot of them were, you know, out of questionable hunting you know, the short hair breeders. Also, too, are a way better value, you know, for the money. They want premium price for Vizslas these days, and you know, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but short hairs are just a better value. Although, you know, the money you spend for a puppy is the smallest amount of money that you're ever going to spend on the dog anyway. I realize that, but you know, it is a consideration.
Yeah, it was a consideration when I stumbled across the breed, you know. I was looking at Brittany's, I was looking at Vizslas were on the list.
Yeah.
I was looking at pointers as well, and you know, you start looking at all of them, and then price was a consideration, especially it knocked a couple of them off the list. And availability too.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, those two things combined.
Yes, yeah, that was. I just totally lucked out with Sawyer. I just found a breeder, called him. We made the trip up there. He's a couple hours away, 2-3 hours away from where I live, and he happened to have one male left, and I just wanted to go meet him in his operation. I didn't want to buy a dog, and a week later we had a dog. So it just happened to work out. He had one male, and I didn't get to choose the dog again. I thought, man, I'm taking the last dog again out of this litter. You know, I did that with the Vizsla, and here I am doing that with this short hair. But everything's been terrific. He's been a wonderful dog. Right now, he's having a hard time coming off of hunting season, though. You know, this has been a rough 3 or 4 weeks here for him in the house. So he's a little more chewy than he normally is. So
yeah, I have a couch that's been destroyed now twice.
Oh, geez. Is that the puppy?
Yeah, she's, and it's just she's just bored. It's bottom line.
Yeah.
And it's my fault. I can't say anything else, but she is a little bit more mouthy than any other dog I've ever had. She literally, you give her any kind of toy or anything like that has any kind of stuffing, 15 minutes, it's all out. Maybe in some of them it's 5. And dog knows how to destroy a living room in like 2 minutes. She'd be a good kennel dog.
Right. Maybe you'll get the best of her here and turn her around. You know,
we're
still pretty young, right? What is she?
Oh, she's 8 months old, and we're over the hump. We're over the hump. But it's
I don't like the puppy years, but
I do and I don't. It's the extreme of everything.
Right.
They're fucking awesome when they're awesome, and they're the worst damn thing in the world when they're
exactly.
It miles out after that, but yeah. So, what's your connection up to the Northwoods? You know, you Flatlander coming north, like what you kind of alluded a little bit to it, but like I really know where you hang out, and it's a cool area, and I'm not going to hotspot or anything, but how'd you end up there?
All right. So I do live in Illinois. I am from Illinois. My dad grew up in Northwest Wisconsin in the Hayward area. He grew up on a resort. My grandfather was a fishing guide, muskie fishing guide. And my father was born at the resort with his brothers and sisters. He's got a decent-sized family, 8 siblings, and they grew up in the woods, and that's our connection. So we've been going up there. I've been going up there my entire life. My dad eventually moved away, went into the service, and found himself in Illinois for my life, and then he retired back up there. So they had owned some property for many years, and they finally built a house on it. And that's our connection now, is the house. My dad passed away 7 years ago, but my mom's still around. And so I spent a lot of time, as much time as I can, in Northwest Wisconsin and that Chippewa flowage area. If I'm not really, I guess I'm sort of hot spotting, but that's the area that the family's from. So there's a lot of sort of family legacy up there, I guess, if you will, with the fishing traditions, and it's kind of a storied tale, I suppose, on how they started their resort and the family before them, and you know, it was a couple different generations, and you know, they were there for the creation of the Chippewa flowage, so they owned a farm that was on the Chippewa River before it was a lake. Yeah, before the dam. So they basically were had a place, a small farm on the river, and it's just north of the dam. Actually, I've actually fished directly over the house that my grandfather grew up in. And when they created the flowage, they had to buy out a certain amount of properties, right? The state, or it might have been the feds at that level, buy out your property, and they had to relocate. So they relocated and then started the whole reason that the Chippewa flowage was built was, you know, as for power generation, and then consequently, there was a ton of recreation that sparked all over the lake. So resorts popped up. It kind of became a destination. A lot of people from Illinois, Minnesota came to vacation, and they kind of served that market. So he grew up on that, and my grandfather guided all kinds of people. I mean, if I could go back in time and interview my grandfather, I would kill to do that. But I was a teenager when he passed, so I didn't hear as many stories as I would like, because I was a stupid teenager, but I heard enough. But he used to guide all the Chicago gangsters, for example, They were very common customers of his, repeat customers. And he said they were probably his best customers because, number one, they had money, and two, they weren't there to cause trouble. They were there to get away from trouble. So they would spend extended stays there, more than just a week. Because back in those days, the road system, it was a several day trip from Chicago to get there because, there were no highways like there is today. So if somebody traveled that far, they would stay for weeks, and not just a week like we might today, because they would spend a week just driving to get there. And so it was a little bit different arrangement, but and my dad was born right there on the flowage, and he worked at that resort until he was old enough to go into service. So that's basically our connection. Grandfather had a house actually just up the road from where our current place is now. And my dad built that house, and I just love going up there, everything about it. Got a lot of family members in that direction. And, there's just not a better place to go, in my opinion. And because of the house, it keeps us connected. So I go there as much as possible.
It's the Northwoods, and everybody's got their little...
It's the Northwoods, yeah.
Connection to the Northwoods and where they go. I definitely like areas in your neck of the woods. I've got some connections as well that, brought me up there, and I, thank a buddy for introducing that area to me. But even before that, we used to, when I kind of first moved over to the west side of the state and into the Twin Cities, my buddies from the east side, we'd meet up at the Chippewa Flowage every year and just camp out on the islands and fish for, a 5-day week. And in the summertime, just to get back to, or a 5 day, 5 days, 4 or 5 days, and just get back together in the summertime. And it was fun. We did that for a few years, and then I started grouse hunting heavily up there, and there's other
the
areas.
Lake is very wild still. They keep the shoreline. The permitting process to have a shoreline house is, they don't hand those out very often. So if you go there, it's almost like, and we used to travel to Canada to musky fish every summer when I was a kid. And it really reminds me of those Canadian lakes that have nothing on them. The flowage is pretty wild shoreline. They keep it like that deliberately. So it's really just a special place, I think. And, I've been hunting the same covers I have my whole life. So some of the roads I go down are some of the ones I walked when I was 12, still today. So that's fun too, to see how the forest has changed over those years. I mean, the logging operation that goes on there is just amazing. And that just keeps the bird numbers moving. So this year I did venture out quite a bit more.
Yeah. You logged some miles this year?
Just because I tried to, I set a goal of hunting more new places than I ever have this year. And I probably was like 70% new, I would say.
Nice.
Even though I was in the same general area, I just branched out more to see what I could find. And that was a lot of fun. Some were hits and some were not hits, but it was great to see different areas. And some of them you don't have to travel very far and you feel like you're way far away, right? When you're up there, it's like you might only be 15 miles from where you normally are, but it just seems like it's a lot further.
Well, I'm 15 miles up there, like the cover type changes quite a bit in certain areas. And
yeah, definitely does.
There's a lot of different directions you can head from there. I mean, especially if you look at the Chippewa Flowage, you go 30 miles north, 30 miles south, like it's a totally different landscape.
Yeah, it definitely is.
You can go west and it's all sand, Well, you got a little further west.
Isn't that neat? Yeah, it's really. Yeah, I mean, within an hour of the house, I'm in the Barrens there if I want to. It totally changes. So,
you ever gone over there and run on the sharptails?
I haven't. I actually, this year, believe it or not, this year was the first year I even drove through there. So it was during grouse season. I was headed up north of there to Douglas County, but I drove through the Barrens there, and it was really neat. But I've never run my dog there, and but after seeing it, I think I might give it a shot in the spring.
Yeah, it gets pretty busy.
Does it?
Okay. Yeah.
I've suspected that, but
it's become more popular, we'll put it that way.
Okay. Because I've run the dog on the chickens down there near
Buena Vista area,
that Stevens Point area. Yeah, and that's a lot of fun, but it's pretty busy there. But yeah, I guess definition of busy is different, but
yeah, probably.
It's not like a hunt club.
No.
But you do see other guys out there doing the same thing.
Yeah, I was really surprised one day when I was up on the Barrens this fall, and it was, I kind of didn't get moving as early as I probably should have. But I got there pretty early, and it was just like truck, and they weren't bear hunters.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, it was.
Have you seen many? Too. Have you had many bird? Have you had many contacts up there?
I ran a dog for a friend in, I don't know what it was, like the puppy stakes and maybe like the open derby for the sharptail event up there for the cover dogs this year. And the race that I ran on, the two dogs definitely kind of bumped a covey, group of sharptails that was probably 15 big. But they had been pushed around a little bit from the trial grounds. So I don't really know what happened because dog was kind of out of sight with the cover. Just seen birds fly out the other side. They were probably like 100, 150 yards out. So, yeah. Yep.
Nice.
So, I mean,
it's pretty unique.
I saw other people
little area
or move birds out there on the trial grounds too. I've personally gone out and ran the dogs a couple times, found some sharptails. But yeah, I've got a couple other spots.
You've done the you've done the lek viewing up there, haven't you?
Yes.
You've viewed the birds on the spring leks.
Yeah, that is intense. I like it. You should really do that. Pretty. Especially with your camera.
Yeah, right. Bring my long lens at least, huh?
Oh, if you've never seen...
Or maybe you don't need a long lens, I don't know.
I definitely did not need a long lens that day when I was out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had two sharptails that were within 5 feet of the blind.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. Most of them were within.
Is there like a low?
We've got a low here in the recording.
Port?
So,
yeah. Sorry. Is there like a low window you can get a low shot or?
The blind I was in, it was more of like a little hunting blind. I got kind of lucky from the Wisconsin Sharp-Tailed Grouse Society and a nice ask. And one of the blinds I was in, a biologist was kind of doing a lek count and survey on, and they left it up for me for a day. And so it was just a little pup tent blind with a chair in it.
Oh, cool.
They have like viewing blinds at Namaquock and Barrens that you can rent, and I think they're kind of just, regular little blinds. I'm sure you could get some kind of camera with a tripod in there and make something work.
I see. Okay.
I haven't been into the new ones.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
You really should. I can get you some information if you want to. I think you got to make a reservation to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was on the site last year and I had every intention of going. It just didn't work out, you know.
It was a tough year last year.
I could get there, but yeah, right. Spring was a little different last year.
Yeah. Well, anyways, man, you want to kind of close out the show here with some maybe tips for grouse hunters heading up north, maybe wanting to shoot cameras, maybe wanting to understand a little bit of tips that you use to find grouse and woodcock in the fall. I don't know. Leave us with a little bit of knowledge, my friend, and then we'll close out the show.
All right. So, you know, as you hunt grouse, you kind of, you know, develop an eye for the cover, right? Everybody kind of knows that, and you just get that from time on the ground. But there's really not a lot of covers that won't have birds in them. Somewhere, you know, you'll have thicker areas, obviously, than others. But if you focus, you know, using tools today like Onyx has totally, in my mind, changed. It's changed everything, because even though when you're in the woods, your visibility is only as far as you can see in the woods. So I think back to when we were quote unquote partridge hunters. Back then, we would hunt 2 tracks and you pretty much stayed on the trail, because if you ventured off, you might not find your way back to the trail. So we walked a lot of roads, and you never know what's beyond that last corner, right? You're like, oh, is it worth me walking? I can see it up there, but man, I've been walking a long time, and if I walk around that corner and there's nothing, I might just, waste energy. Today, you can see the cuts. You can see the age of the cuts in a lot of cases. And more importantly, you can find those edges with your mapping tools. So use your mapping tools, whether it's Onyx or Scout and Hunt. Those are so valuable, especially for a new hunter. Even though you're going to open the map and you're going to look at it and go, what the hell is that? Onyx will actually label things called grouse area, and it's pretty good. I mean, it's not going to be a shoe-in, but if you look at that and you see it and you go to that cover is generally pretty good. But until you get your eyeballs on it, you don't really know. But that tool will help you know that if you drive or walk another mile, you're going to get in a good cover or not. And it just changes the way you hunt. And for me, I always run the tracking app when I'm running on X, so I can record my track, and now I have sort of a diary, if you will, of the hunt through the season by date. And I can go back and look at where I was, and then if I see birds, I have a particular way of marking those on the map. But the great thing about grouse hunting is a lot of people focus on the dog component, which is a super important part if you choose to go that way. But the great thing about grouse hunting is you do not need a dog. You don't need much of anything, really. It's probably the sport where maybe you need the least amount of equipment. You don't need an expensive gun. You get the cheapest shotgun you can find, a decent pair of boots. You don't need brush pants. You don't, you might need a vest or some sort to carry something. But just get out and walk, flush birds, and shoot. You're going to learn how to shoot without a dog. And if I'm being honest, I probably killed more birds without a dog than I do with a dog. However, I see way more birds with a dog than I did without, if that makes sense. Because, the dog he's going to do 2 things. He's going to find more birds, but, grouse are not going to tolerate sloppy work. And I'm not saying my dog is a bad grouse dog, but he's certainly not the finest grouse dog there is. He has his days when he's damn good. But he has days where he's not good. And he blows a lot of good shots that I know I would I would have took if I didn't have him, let's say, or maybe he busted him too far ahead of me. But if I didn't have that dog, I probably wouldn't be standing in that spot to see that bird in the first place. So the dog is like a big motivator to me. It's like he's the reason at this point that he's not the total reason, but he's probably 75% of the reason that I'm there. And he's certainly the reason that I got these stupid cameras strapped to my head and in my pocket. So that the dog makes you a better student of the species and the hunt, in my opinion, because you just take it a little bit more seriously when you have a dog. You think about things a little bit differently. If I look back when I was hunting without a dog, it was more like a vacation, right? I love bird hunting, but it wasn't something that I really thought about from a technical standpoint. Okay, what was the cover that I saw and what were the reasons that I think birds were there? I probably wasn't doing that back then. In fact, I know I wasn't doing that back then, but I was just relying on my eye to kind of teach me, what looks grousey and what doesn't. But the dog just, it pulls you into the whole sort of lifestyle, I guess, to a certain degree. And but don't focus on the dog if you want to get into hunting. Just grab some shells and a shotgun and go walk. It's really simple. You're going to be humbled. You're going to miss most of the time, especially when you're new. A lot of grouse hunters, they might not kill a bird for the first 5 years they hunt on the wing, and that's just the way it is. It's a different type of shooting, and it's difficult. Yeah, but I don't know. There's not a better way to spend October than in the woods. So, in my opinion, I don't think you'll be sorry.
October is a special time of year.
Yeah. Although November is a very, very close second.
I will say on a year like this, y'all can have November. Yeah, I'm taking December.
Yeah, you know what? You are completely right. The birds are grouped back up again. And December was great. I hunted the last weekend of the season this year. I've never done that before, to be honest with you.
I hunted the last day of the season. It was by far the worst dog work I think we had all season, but we had just gotten snow.
Yeah, I didn't have great dog work.
we had just gotten snow, and literally the birds had fed in the morning, and I think they were just hunkered down. We came in the afternoon, and it just bump. Like I go where this bird came from, and I'm looking, and it's just it's a pile, and there's no tracks, and I'm just the wind wasn't good. It was like they just didn't move, and I'm going. I had my young dog out, and she did really, really good, and all of a sudden this was just like, what the hell's going on? This is 7 birds that you just run right over, and I put the other dog down, and she's pretty good. She's got a great temperament for grouse, and she starts bumping birds, and I'm going, okay. I can't be too mad at the puppy. The scenting conditions have to be bad, or there's something off here, because this is not normal behavior from her. And it was. So we did end up getting one pinned, and we got two on the 7th. I think it was when it was closed. But it was a little tougher hunting in
it was definitely, it was not an easy weekend for sure, but just to be there without 2 feet of snow is a treat. It's not, that never happens. When I was, they used to have the season was open through the end of January. Right? Until 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And I went up, I went up a few years ago on like New Year's Day, and there was 1.5 feet of snow, and it was awful. Hunting in those I just did it for, the novelty sake of it, I guess. But once the ground is covered with snow, it's like, my mind is off grouse, I guess. I'm usually down here chasing pheasant at that time of year anyway, but this year was kind of cool to be up there at that date.
It was special, man. I honestly, I forego. I decided I wasn't going to go to Kansas this year just because I could run on grouse all the way to the end of the season, and kind of chewed up the rest of my travel budget.
Yeah,
it's a give and take, man. I'll take grouse and running in the Northwoods, finding new spots at the end of the season all day long over running 1,000 miles to go chase some quail. And that's why I guide grouse hunts. I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I had Kansas on my mind this year too, and it was a similar thing. I'm like, man, here we are in December. There's grouse hunting to do, It's like I can just drive here, or I could drive 600 miles to go hunt, the unknown. So, but next year, I gotta
next year.
Get on
yeah,
some quail.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's always next year.
I'd like to return back to Arizona next year. Have you had the pleasure to go down?
Yeah, I'd like to try that.
Oh man, it's at least. I mean, I just want to hunt scalies and gambles again. If I get a chance to hunt merns, it'd be awesome. But
okay.
the desert birds were awesome. Merns are great too. It's just it depends on the year with kind of how. I mean, it was really good when I went down.
Yeah,
and I don't think it was that. I don't think it's been that good this year. But it fluctuates so much.
Yeah,
so you got to kind of pay attention, and when it's good, you got to go. So I'm hoping it's good next year.
It sounds pretty popular these days, from what I gather.
It is.
You're not alone when you're down there anymore.
Yeah, I think there's some places you can go though.
Yeah,
but it is very popular. I mean, you can hunt till middle of February down there.
Right.
I don't know why it wouldn't be popular.
That's an advantage. Yeah. Yeah, they just start later though. They're not getting things started until November, and we're well into our season, so I guess it's all relative.
Well, we got to leave a little bit more for next time. I think there's plenty to talk about. I'd love to get your thoughts on early season grouse, maybe a topic next time or something like that. So, are you going back to Pheasant Fest this year, man?
Tailgate session.
Yeah,
I might. I really enjoyed it last year. It was a lot of fun, and I got to see if I can work it out. I'm going to try. Are you? I imagine you're there.
Yeah, I'm kind of committed, at least at this point. I guess still got to talk to the folks at Wisconsin Sharp-tailed Grouse Society, but I was asked to work the booth a little bit there.
Oh, cool.
And I'm sure I'll float around from there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I hope to go. It was a lot of fun just seeing all the guys that, you kind of know virtually in a way, and connecting with some of them.
It's a good time.
It definitely was.
Anyways,
we had it in Chicago there, 6 years ago. I wish they'd have it there again. It's just down the road from me, so.
Oh no!
Sioux Falls, I might have to 7-hour drive.
Yeah, but Sioux Falls in and out is so much nicer than Chicago, dude. I mean, you get within 15 miles of Sioux Falls, and you don't have any. And then you start dealing with problems. Yeah. You get within 100 miles of Chicago, and it's like,
I prefer not to go there. Yeah.
Maybe you can convince them to bring it out to like Rockford or something like that. It's just a little less of a drive.
That'd be perfect. Yeah. That's more where I live. So
it's way better than Chicago. My mom was from Chicago, and my grandma passed away here at the end of last year, and I'd go down there for a funeral. And I just don't know how people live there. We had to go 20 miles from my aunt's house down to the funeral parlor or the funeral home, and then I think it took us 50 minutes, dude, to go 20 miles.
It's brutal. Oh,
it's just concrete, just people, and buildings and
Right. I have little reason to go there. I haven't been to the city now in a long time, but I have less reason every year.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that, man. I'm always happy to see you in the Northwoods, and we'll have to get together for a beer and a tailgate, and maybe fry some grouse up on a charcoal grill earlier this season when it's a little nicer, man.
Yeah.
All right,
sounds great, man.
Dave, I appreciate you, man, coming on the show. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for letting me yap on as long as I wanted.
Hey, we'd go longer if you wanted, but I think people have probably heard enough.
Great, yeah.
There's a woodcock.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Amazing Outdoors podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, tell a buddy. It all helps promote this show. Get out, join your local conservation effort, and we'll see you all out in the woods or on the water. I'm Brian Mays. Talk to you on the next episode.